Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
All right, and we are live, and this is John Solleder with the Leave Nothing to Chance podcast. It's my tremendous honor today to welcome someone who is an icon in the network marketing industry, been in it for 41 years, believe it or not. Similar to myself, after college, he got involved in the industry with one of the great companies in the industry and still receives income from that company all these years later. But on another note, he was one of the people that helped to get me started in the industry now 38 years ago. That's how long we know each other. Ironically, we grew up in towns next to each other in northern New Jersey. Our mothers used to shop at the same food store, which was on the main drag that we both lived off of. So it's a small world. And the gentleman that actually sponsored me in the industry went to high school with Mark. So it's a really, really small world. And here we are 40 years later, still good friends, still working together on a couple of projects. And anyway, it's my honor to welcome my good friend, Mr. Mark Zuckerbrod, to the call. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, John. Thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
You want to add anything to all those years ago that when we were young?
Yeah. We knew a lot of the same people. It's interesting. Our paths didn't cross till after college and everything else. I was 4 years ahead of you, but still, as you said, we knew a lot of the same people through sports and everything else. So, but now we've met and still, I can't believe it's been almost 40 years. It's crazy.
It is amazing. And of course, neither one of us have aged a day. That's the good part, right?
Yeah, I started this business when I was 6. That's why I'm only 41 years. Add 41 to 6, and there you go.
Yeah, there you go. And if you started at 6, I started at 2, so that's good. So we got plenty of time to go. But
we were child prodigies.
Exactly. So, Mark, I know you've read the book Leave Nothing to Chance. Matter of fact, you're even one of the stories in Leave Nothing to Chance. And of those 15 principles, which one is the most important to you?
Well, I think, John, a lot of them are really important, but one that stuck out to me is really the mindset one, training yourself to think the way that successful people think. And, without going into the whole thing here, there's definitely a mindset, whether it's sports or academics or business or anything else. And people who are successful oftentimes think very differently than people who aren't. So it's putting yourself in that position to even be able to be successful, unless you just get plain lucky. Just their habits, whether it's showing up on time, whether it's going that extra mile in terms of doing that little extra bit of work that can make all the difference, or it's making sure that as you're getting going, specifically in your network marketing business, that you've set yourself up properly, that you've got the right attitude, that you know what you're supposed to do, that you take the extra little bit of time and learn about the product you're talking about, learn about your compensation plan. I'm not saying, spend 9 months doing that and then do nothing in the meantime and waste 9 months, but it's doing those little extra things all the way along. When you look at, I'll give you a good example. When you look at, I'm a tennis player, when you look at the top tennis players in the world, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, and they only win like 54% of their points, which is an astounding figure because you see them winning everything, every single match. Some of them are not close, but a lot of times there's this much difference between the person who wins the big title and the person who loses in the second round. And how many times have a Djokovic or a Nadal or a Federer, and there's 7 rounds in these big tournaments, how many times have they been on the ropes in an early round? And that winning mindset, knowing how to overcome obstacles, and that makes the difference. So instead of losing in the first or second round, they get through that and they end up going to win the tournament. People go, wow, they clobbered everybody. No, a lot of it was really close. And that's the same thing in our business. The difference between someone who might be making $1,000 a month and someone making $10,000 a month, a lot of it's right here, and the little extra things they do that make the difference, the consistency every single day, the having a daily method of operation, not giving up when you have a bad first hour in the day, distractions, all the things that come up in our lives as we go, overcoming those distractions. So all those things are the mindset that successful people have that oftentimes people who don't make it, whether it's network marketing or anything else, they don't have that mindset. So to me, that was something that really stood out.
Wow. That's a great point. And that's amazing. Only 54%. You think how successful all three of those guys have been. And I never played tennis. Of course, you've been a big part of your life. I know you played at a very high level. But when I watch those guys, it almost reminds me of the old fights with Frazier and Ali. It's like such heavyweights going back and forth. And like you say, that margin between winning and losing is so close. And those guys, unless they're playing each other, they all seem to come out on top, right?
Well, think about this. Exactly. And think about this. If you watch the guy who's watch a Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic, you watch a guy who's number 100 in the world, and you just watch them out hitting the ball back and forth. You cannot tell the difference. Now, it's all these guys have good strokes. All these guys are good players. Now, some are better, some have weaknesses. But when you start getting up into those higher levels, it's this and conditioning. Exactly. It's physical conditioning and mental conditioning, the mindset that can make a huge difference. There are players who could have been great and they just didn't have the mindset to get into that top group. And think about this in network marketing terms also. There are players who they might have shined really bright for 3 months, then they fizzled out because they couldn't maintain the consistency at the higher level. And so it's all these little things, Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer, they're like, all-time greats. What they've done is beyond the pale, like Michael Jordan or LeBron James. But take those top people out of it and think about people who are, let's say the person who's the 5th starter on an NBA team or someone who's number 50 in the world in tennis. That 50 in the world guy may have gotten up to number 10 or 12, but he couldn't maintain that level, either mentally or physically. The guy who's the number 5 starter on a team, okay, he may go through a streak where all of a sudden he starts scoring 30 points a game for 4 games, but he can't do that over and over and over again. So it's figuring out the skills, understanding what needs to be done, and then implementing on a long, consistent basis. Look at Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl at 43. His diet routine, his exercise routine, his sleep routine, he does what other people aren't willing to do. LeBron James at 35, he does what other people aren't willing to do. And so those are, when you're talking the ultra success, it's that type of a mindset. It's completely different than the average person. And even when you're talking serious success, look at 6-figure network marketing earners, unless they got lucky and just landed on 1 or 2 people and don't really know what happened, they've gotten in there and they've done the basics over and over and over and over again for a significant period of time. They don't just do it for a month or two and say, oh, this isn't working, on to the next thing. And that's a big problem in our industry, by the way, what we call multi-level junkies, who they've tried 17 things, they've never stuck with any of them. Exactly. And so, they're just, they don't have that successful mindset. It's just a whole different thing. Granted, sometimes the company's no good or it turns out the product's no good or whatever, but all of the things being consistent, that most of the companies have good products, most of the companies have good compensation plans, most of them have decent management. Okay, so why did you need to go to 9 different companies? What did you think that's going to happen in company 5 that didn't happen in companies 1, 2, 3, and 4? So if the company goes out of business on you, that's, I think, nothing you can do about it. But I've watched potentially good people just jump around every year. It's like the flavor I get a call once a year, the flavor of the month or flavor of the year that they're calling on. And 6 months later, you can pretty much count they're going to call you on something else. Why didn't they stick with that one? They give you a bunch of reasons. 10 years later, they're still broke.
Wow.
And so, just some observations of what I've seen over the years.
Yeah, well, great observations. And you've seen so many things happen. So let's talk a little bit about books. I know your mom was an educator, so I know you grew up around books, certainly, and grew up around reading. I know you went to a great college and graduated. So books have been part of your life. But from a self-development standpoint, there had to be one book, young Mark Zuckerberg, one book somebody put in your hands, or you fell across it going to the tennis court or something that you picked up, you read it and went, wow, this made sense.
Well, there is. And because I got involved in this industry in 1980, and back then the whole personal development industry was nothing like it is now. And so I just moved to California, just graduated, and just gotten involved in the company I was in. And I was just trying to figure things out. I grew up in a very traditional household in terms of business. And my mom was a teacher. My dad was trained as an engineer, ended up in business. But I never really thought of alternative businesses. I didn't think of something like network marketing. I didn't think of, wow, I could have been a pro sports agent. I mean, it just wasn't on my radar. So, everyone I knew went to college. A lot of them went to grad school, law school, business school, whatever it might be, med school. And then you went on and became a doctor, lawyer, accountant, went to work for a big corporation. I really didn't come from much of an entrepreneurial background. So the book that really stuck with me is a book called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. And I remember sitting on the beach reading it. I probably read it 5 times, but I remember sitting on the beach reading it. I think I was about 22, 23. And I remember thinking, well, first of all, I need to put in a disclaimer on the book. It was written in the 50s, and it's sort of sexist just in terms of it was a lot more men in the workforce. So it always talked about men in the book for the most part. So if you do read it, don't be offended by that, because a lot of the principles are good. And what it got me to realize was that I could do more than I thought I could do. I could think bigger than what I could see in front of my face. And it was an eye opener for me, because I was always under the impression, you go to school, you get out, you get a good job, and you work your way up the corporate ladder. And no one ever talked to me about really starting a business, and, it could be as big as you wanted it to be. And that a lot of it was up to you, assuming you were in the right vehicle. I mean, if it's a Yugo versus a Ferrari and you're driving a Yugo, it's a lot harder to get it in. For those that don't know Yugo, if I'm dating myself, that was a car that came out of Yugoslavia, like the old Yugoslavia. Now it's, Serbia, Croatia, and all the other countries. But this was like, from the 1950s or something, and it barely ran. So, the best driver in a Yugo wasn't going to beat an average driver in a Ferrari. But assuming your vehicle was decent, whatever you chose to do, this just really pointed out the bigger picture. So I could start seeing, and I was told way back when, and this really jived with the book, by the founder of the company I got in, who's one of the major legends of the industry. And we were talking about my goals. Now, keep in mind, this is 1980. And my first goal, I just wanted to make a couple of bucks. But then I saw my goal as, $2,000 a month. Okay, that was something reasonable. And my big sort of dream goal, I'd like to make $100,000 a year. That was huge money back then. And so I was saying this to the founder of the company, and he looked at me when about the $2,000 a month, he goes, why not $20,000 a month? And I was like, I don't know, why not? But I can't grasp that. And he said, all it is another zero. And I went, I didn't grasp that either. When I went home and started thinking about it, I realized that was very true, because the same things in our industry that get you to $2,000 a month get you to $20,000 a month. It wasn't like, okay, I started this little donut shop, and all I had to be able to do was make donuts, and I could sell donuts and run one donut shop. And now it's a totally different set of skills to run 300 donut shops. But here in network marketing, it's basically the same skills repeated over and over again. And as you grow in your business, there's nothing really different about 2,000 versus 20,000, because you're still getting customers. You're still helping make sure they get good results. You're still building a team of distributors, helping them and supporting them, and helping them get customers and build a team. So the thing was the same. When I realized that, combined with all the other stuff that was in that book, it got me to think much bigger. And it allowed me, after stumbling around for a year and a half and getting nowhere, but not quitting, my sponsor quit. And I don't know where he's drinking beer on a couch somewhere and watching football games, but he's passed up millions of dollars in the last 40 years for not having just stuck around. And it got me, after 18 months of banging my head against the wall, I sort of figured out how to do it. And then from there, I surpassed not only the 2,000 a month and not only the 20,000 a month, but went way by that too. And so it was, it all worked out. I mean, it worked out. I was lucky to be in the right vehicle. I chose a good company, and they've done well, and listened to the right people, and then rolled up my sleeves and worked very hard.
Wow. Great stuff. So, okay. So we talked about the Schwartz book, but it had to be, and I know you've read multiple books, but what 3 all time would be your 3 favorites?
Well, for all different reasons. And the next 2 are not your typical personal development books. One of the books, it was actually a series. It was 2 books. One's called The Inner Game of Tennis, and the other one's called Inner Tennis. And these were written back in the 60s or 70s. But what they talk about is mindset. Mm-hmm. And whether you're in a network marketing company, I look at everything in sports analogies, which can drive people crazy sometimes, but it's whether you're a network marketing company, you're on the basketball or tennis or football, tennis court or football field, so much of it's right here. And when you're playing, there's stress, there's pressure, there are nerves, and we don't always perform at our best when we've got all the nerves and everything else. So your muscles literally physically tighten up when you're nervous and you're trying to perform physically. Well, it's the same thing mentally. If you're going to go talk to somebody and you're not in the right frame of mind and you're not focused on the outcome and you're not focused on the process and you're not focused on all the things that are going to happen, you can freeze up and just sort of babble. And so what I found is that these two books, if you're not into tennis, you're going to find them, they're really probably not going to help you that much. But if you are, they can help you a lot. Even though they're old fashioned, it really teaches you how to breathe, how to slow down your mind, how to really stay in the moment, how to focus on what's at hand. I'm thinking about this point right now, not what happened 3 games ago. Mm-hmm. Which, how do you equate that to network marketing? For example, okay, I had 5 people tell me no, but now I'm sitting here talking to you, John. Mm-hmm. Now, am I focused on the 5 people that told me no and thinking John's probably going to tell me no also? Or am I focused on forgetting about that and now I'm focusing on why this can be something that can be so good for you? So that book was very, very helpful. And another one that I thought was great because, I've watched a lot of people in a lot of industries, but especially in network marketing, I've watched a lot of people make a lot of money and blow a lot of money. And, I've watched people make $1 million a year for a number of years. And then I find out 5 years later, they're broke. They just went bankrupt. How does that happen? Makes no sense. And so I read a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And it's by, I wrote down because I can never remember the names of the guys, Thomas Stanley and William Danko, Danko. And it talks about who are the millionaires out there. Because you think about people that are, they're driving the super fancy cars. I mean, like I live in Southern California. Half the people in Southern California, their car's nicer than their house. And so I'm thinking of, people that they look like $1 billion. They've got on the fanciest suits. They're driving the nicest cars. They're picking up the tabs in the restaurant, for the fancy restaurants for everybody else. But when it comes down to it, their bank account's got nothing in it or very little in it. And so what this book did was, and this is probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was written, but it really talked about who are your millionaires next door. And most of the time it was the family living in a nice but modest house. Think of Warren Buffett living in the original house he bought in Nebraska, 60 years ago. He still lives there. He could buy the town, probably buy the whole state. But, he lives in that same house. Now, he can do whatever he wants. But for most people, it's doing the building blocks of your financial plan as you start making money and doing it smart. This is not a financial planning course, but, there are certain things that you want to do in terms of having a certain amount of money set aside for rainy days, in terms of having having all your insurances covered, to cover your family if something happens, in terms of building up equity in a house, in terms of all these things, setting up funds for your kids for college, if that's their goal, or setting up for your own retirement. And what the book in summary says, you need to do the things that are important for you and the financial security of your family. I worked very closely with Jim Rohn for many years and even shared stage with him a number of times. And he always talked about building a financial wall around you and your family. Mm-hmm. You don't build a financial wall around you and your family starting with Ferraris, starting with $2,000 suits. You build a financial wall by doing all the basics. And then once you're making a lot of money and all the basics are already established, hopefully you're paying for those suits and those Ferraris off the interest you're earning, but off your investments, but at the very interest or appreciation, but at the very least, all those things should be covered. And then you're starting to spend on all that. And that's something that, there's this school of thought, fake it till you make it. People aren't going to go with you if you don't look like you got a fancy car, fancy this. I'm not saying wear rags, but $2,000 suits when you've got a $3,000 check make no sense, or you get the idea. So it's all those things combined that really made that a very valuable book for me, realizing it's not what I can show off to other people. It's what I can have as security for my family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And is there a third book? I know we mentioned two
There
tennis
was three:
books.
Magic of Thinking Big, the tennis books,
Okay.
and the Millionaire Next Door.
Great. So it's four. Yeah, I remember when that Millionaire book came out, and it was amazing to read, and it made so much sense. I think they even made a TV show out of it for a little while on CNBC or something.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, the people you wouldn't suspect had money, and the people you thought had the money,
Exactly.
they it was all pretense, So,
well, I'll never forget a story I heard about somebody I knew, and I heard back that in this case, and by the way, this is just me, but you want to make sure that if you're married, you and your spouse know your finances and understand your finances together. This particular couple was remodeling their kitchen for about $125,000, about, 10 years ago. And the wife didn't realize that not only were they borrowing the money to do that, but they didn't have any additional money. They lived great, but basically they were going bankrupt, and they ended up filing bankruptcy within a couple of months. But meanwhile, they're spending $125,000 remodeling a totally functional kitchen.
wow.
When that money should have been in the bank. But they always had the nicest cars, the new cars, the fancy clothes. So if you went in their house or you run into them, you think these people got millions sitting in the bank or sitting in investments. And it turns out they didn't have anything. And so just different ways of approaching life. And I'm not saying one's wrong, but if you want to build that financial wall around you and your family, then that's not going to work that way.
Yeah, sure. It certainly takes some discipline. So I come into your house this afternoon, Mark. What are you reading today?
Actually, today, what I've been reading is a book called The Mind-Gut Connection. I can't know if you can see it. It's by Dr. Emran Mayer. He's a UCLA professor. And what they're finding out more and more now is that there's a tremendous connection between the mind, the brain, and your gut, and also your heart. And that a lot of what happens in your body is happening as a result of your gut. And a lot of things they thought were in your brain or in your gut and other things. Very, very interesting field. It's becoming very, well popularized now. People are becoming more aware of gut health and how important that is and so forth.
Wow. Great. So let's talk a little bit of strategy. You've been doing this a long time. You've had tremendous success personally. You've had people in your groups that have become, real legends in the industry. But when you have to get somebody new started, what's your best way to get somebody started? Whether is it a 2-day plan? Is it a day plan? Is it a month plan? I mean, what's the best way? You're talking to me. I'm new. Maybe I've never been in the industry. Maybe I've never sold anything in my life. Maybe I'm in that category right now of 55 plus year old people that because of the pandemic, maybe they've lost a job, maybe they've lost a business, maybe they're in a business that's going to is watered down, or it's going to be watered down when things get back to quote unquote normal. Or that they're that other category. They're 25, they've got all these internet skills, they know how to work an iPhone, they know how to work a Zoom call, they know how to do all that, but they have no clue what they're going to do. And all of a sudden, their next door neighbor says, "Hey, join my network marketing company." And they go, "Wow, that sounds like a great idea." What does Mark Zuckerberg do with them?
I'll take on both of those. And first thing people have to have is they've got to get a belief level. They've got to believe in the product. They've got to believe in the company. Not everyone believes in the product. They'll just go do the business, but those people usually don't last very long. They say, "I'm not using that. I'm never going to," but you believe in your product, believe in your company. And most important is belief in yourself. And that's going to come from seeing product results. That's going to come from making a couple of sales, getting a couple of distributors, making a couple of bucks. So I want to put money in people's pockets as fast as humanly possible. Some people won't let you for a couple of weeks. I want to use the product for 4 weeks before I do anything. Nothing you can do about that, but then make sure you follow up well and that they do get good product results. It's really so much of it, talk about a plan, 1 day, 30 day, you can come out of the gate. My first year and a half in this business, I was 23 when I started. And you can come out of the gate and you had great results right away, or you can come out of the gate, have no results. That was me. I got my first check was $1.49, 5% of $30. And then it went to, I think, $49, then 77. I could be off by a few dollars. Then 400 something, 200, 400, 700 something, then back to 400, back to 200, back down to basically zero.
Wow.
I got a few things going and then disappeared. I was 8 months into the business with essentially no check. But here's what I knew. I knew there were other people who I didn't think were any better than me or any more skilled than me. They were starting to make something. Now, keep in mind, this is 1980, so it's 40 years ago. And, a dollar is different than it is today. But they were starting to make, there were a couple of people in the company making 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a month. And I said, if they can do that, what I really need to do is find out what it is they're doing and duplicate it. Because these people were not, some fancy talking, whatever. One was a teacher, one was something else. And so what I did was I went and basically found mentors. I looked around my company for people who were doing well, and I sort of attached myself to them. I don't mean literally, I didn't move in with them, but I would ask them questions. I would find out what they were doing. And throughout the history of network marketing, the techniques of how we do the business have always changed. In the 80s, there was a lot of newspaper ads. Well, nobody knows newspaper ads now. Now it's much more internet based, and other times it was different things, but the concepts are the same. So what really I needed to find out, once I liked this type of business, which I did, the idea of leverage and the idea of ongoing income was exciting to me. And so I needed to find out what techniques were working there in my particular company with my products and my business. So I found the two of these guys that were making like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. One guy had sponsored the other. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing? They said, well, we're doing them. If you want to see what we're doing these meetings. It was about 2 hours from me. If you want to come up, come look and see what we're doing. So I didn't have the money to stay in a hotel. So I drove two or maybe 3 hours each way, 4 nights in a row. And I watched what they were doing. And I said, oh, I realized what I haven't been doing. So I started doing what they were doing. And within 6 months, my check was $6,000 back in 1982. So I started the end of 1980. As of like March, April of 82, I'd gone up a little bit, down to almost nothing, stumbled around. I was making maybe $300, $400 a month after a year and a half. And even back then, that was not much money. And even though I do remember, John, when we were kids, you could buy a bagel for 8 cents and an entire pizza at Lisa's Pizza for $3. So, but that was even before, that was 10 years before this. And that check went from 0 to 6,000 in 6 months. And then in the next 18 months, it quadrupled, actually went up 6 times more in the next 18, 24 months. And so, it was something where I was just an adjustment, but the most important thing, I stuck around long enough to figure out what the people were doing that were making it. And I went out and tried that and was able to do it. But I certainly wasn't an overnight success. So it's really getting people a plan. I mean, I like a 90-day plan just because anything can happen on any one day, 7 days, 30 days. You just don't know. Just like anything in life, there's an element of luck. If you talk to 100 people in a certain time period, you're going to get a lot luckier than if you talk to 3. But you don't know when that really strong person is going to walk in the door and you're going to talk to them. It could be person number 6 or number 1, or it could be person number 99. And I'll give you a good example about that. I ran some ads in 1994, and it's $150 a week, 1994, and I ran 6 weeks worth of ads. I got about 30 calls the first week, 25. Anyway, it dwindled down. At the end of about 135 calls, 140 calls, I had signed up 2 people. Both of them had returned their kits. So I had nothing. It was an ad to get distributors. This one wasn't for customers. And I said, I got to keep running this. I ran it 1 more week. I got a call from this guy and we chatted. He had been a pretty successful guy, but was down on his luck. So I took him out for a sandwich and we talked. He introduced me to one person. That one person, about a month or 2 later, got going. Not only did they pay for those ads, that one person paid for those ads, I don't know how many, 100 times over. I don't know. I have to go do some calculations. And so I was this close to stopping the ad. Now, if you have an ad campaign that's gone on for 9 months and it's bad, obviously don't keep throwing good money after bad. But I had committed to 6 weeks. I thought about pulling it after 4, thought about pulling it again after 5. I said, you know what? I'm going to stick to the commitment I made. And it was the 147th call out of, I think, 149 or 151 that came in. That was the guy who introduced me to someone who went on to become very successful.
Wow. Wow.
So, that's just, and that's why I like a 90-day plan, because a 90-day plan, it forces you to keep running the ad or keep talking to the people. And really how you do it is you break it down to 91-day plans. What's my daily method of operation today? I'm going to do that for 7 straight days. At the end of 7 days, I'm going to sit back and evaluate what worked, what didn't work. I modify the plan a little bit, little here, 7 more days, do it again. Where am I after 30 days? 30 days, I do more of an evaluation and continue what's working, change what's not, do that over 90 days. And what I found is the people who really, really succeed are the people who can string together 3 or 4 90-day plans. It's like, wow, I got to work my tail off for a year. Well, you know what? If you get a regular job, what are you going to do for a year? You're going to work your tail off for 40 years probably. So that was sort of my plan. And look, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink, as the old saying goes. There's certain people, doesn't matter. You give them all the support, you give them all the tools, and it's not going to make any difference, and it's not your fault. It's your fault if you don't return their calls. It's your fault if you don't show up for a 3-way call or a meeting. It's your fault if you're, rude or arrogant or whatever, and you chase people away. But if someone just won't do something, it's not your fault, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That persistence is what's helped you to earn an income from one company now for 41 straight years. I mean, when you just think about that, you're in a category of people in our industry that have done something unique to be 41 years with one company, still making money from it after all this time. And you made a lot of valuable points there, but 2 that stand out. Number 1 is find a mentor, right? If people are doing well in your company, figure out what they're doing, obviously, and pattern it. Tailor it, mirror it, whatever you want to call it. And number 2, of course, is persistence, not quitting. And that's the thing, that we've both seen over the years, right? There's so many people give up on themselves and their dreams, all those dreams that they had. Oh, well, I ran an ad, or I made 3 phone calls. Somebody said no. They said I was crazy. They said whatever, and they're done. They give up. So let's segue, Mark.
Let me make one more point, John, because
go ahead.
One of the reasons I persisted through so much over so many years is I looked at the alternatives, and, going to law school and becoming a lawyer, even though a lot of people thought I was a lawyer, was not my thing. I didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to go work for a big corporation. I was not going to be a political animal in a Fortune 500 corporation and sort of, play all the politics to get to the top of the company. And at the time when I started, I was 23. I didn't have any money. So I couldn't spend a whole lot of money to start a big business or, buy a franchise. I didn't have the money to do that. So the biggest thing for me was freedom, time freedom, and financial freedom. And I have friends, I'm 63 years old now, and I have friends that have made a lot of money and they have tons of money, but for most of their lives, they've been slaves to their job or their business. Okay. They're, traveling all the time because they have to. They're not home much with their family, or haven't been. Now, maybe at this age, they've gotten to slow down. But I was able to do that, even though I was working hard, I was around my family. I got to play tennis when I wanted to. I made up the time later, but I got to play tennis in the afternoons a lot, maybe not the first couple of years, but after that I did. And so that freedom to lead life on your own terms was what really kept me going. And you've got to believe, number 1, that it can happen. And number 2, then you've got to be willing to have the persistence and do the work to make it happen. Because I can say I've got a lot of friends who have made tons of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions, 50s of millions, but none of them have had the freedom that I've had throughout my life.
Exactly.
And one or two that made it huge when they were 30 and sold a company, and they did. But that's such a rare exception. You look at all the people making $500,000 or $1 million a year out there. A lot of those people, they don't have much freedom. They work all the time. And I'm not saying you don't work hard here, but there is a point where if you do it right over a period of years, that you can relax.
Exactly. So in as we get to the end of this, Mark, network marketing is giving you that freedom, and you've seen it in so many other people. But you really worked with some of the true icons in our industry. So I'm just going to throw a couple names, and if you've got a couple brief thoughts on them, 2 guys in particular, and you mentioned one earlier. Okay, so we'll start with him. Okay, I know you worked with Jim Rohn. I know you shared the stage with him. I know you interviewed him numerous times. Thoughts on Jim? What did he teach you?
Jim just had a really good, simple way of looking at life in general, and then how it related to business. Like when he talks about the seasons, when you got to plant your seeds in the spring. I'm not a good farmer, so I may get some of this wrong, but you got to plant your seeds in the spring and then water those seeds and then be killing all the weeds throughout the year in order to have that really good crop. And so he used examples like that and how it pertained to things like that, but how that also pertained to your business. You can't expect to plant a field of vegetables and have them all grow in 3 weeks from a seed. It takes time. You can't expect to plant and have the weeds take over your field and then still end up with a good crop. You've got to clean out the weeds. You got to keep the garbage moving out. And so it was things like that. And he affected so many people over the years. And he just had an interesting, he called himself a business philosopher. And that's really what it was. It was a lot of stuff that if you had to sometimes think about it, what he was saying, but when you thought about it, you say, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that really, and if I apply that to my business, it can really help me.
Yeah, matter of fact, I love that book, The Seasons of Life. Is the book he wrote all that in. And we've been, I think, as a country, as a world, the last 12 months, we've been in a winter time, but springtime is coming, and I think of Jim's great work, in that book. You're absolutely right. And any other, of course, is your late friend and your mentor in this industry, Mark Hughes. I know you worked with him early on. You guys were both young guys at that point, but what was Mark like? I met him a couple of times, but you certainly spent a great deal more time with him. What kind of guy was he? He
was a very, very generous guy. He was a great people person. He had a tremendous ability to motivate people, but in a very positive, uplifting way, not in a put down way. There are a lot of people who are motivators, but they do it by beating you over the head with a stick. Mark wasn't like that. He was much more of the carrot person, putting the incentives out there, encouraging you, telling you what you could accomplish. And you can. He's like saying to me when I said, my goal was 2,000 a month. How come not 20,000? And when I said, I don't know, I got this stupid look on my face. And he said, all it is another zero. Now, it took me a while to really figure that out, but it turned out he was really right on that. So I just found him. I mean, there were so many times he did things for us, the people in the field, that he didn't have to do. I'll never forget one time that there was a bonus that, I remember how much it was, I think it was 12,500, that the way the qualification worked out, I qualified for it, but there was some technicality that he probably could have not paid me on. And he said, look, yeah, you could get out of it, but he said, no, that's your money. You got it. I mean, he was always looking for ways to give the field more and reward his people, as opposed to some company owners. They're always looking for ways to hold the money back from you, So, but overall, he was lost too soon. He was human. He had his own challenges and everything else, and he was lost to the world too soon. And it's very, very sad. But it was a great experience working with him because it really helped expand my mind to possibilities of what you could accomplish. Because he thought so big. He thought in the billions back in 1980.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. So, all right. So Mark, just finishing up here. Last thoughts. You've been in this industry a long time. You've had an incredible life. The industry's helped you to certainly do that. You've gotten to play tennis. I know you've gotten to Indian Wells a number of years. I know this year you didn't, of course.
Every year for 30 years till last year when they had and Indian Wells, for anyone that doesn't know, it's the 5th biggest tennis tournament in the world. It's in the desert. It's the most beautiful place. You can be sitting out there. It's 80, 85 degrees. You're sitting in your seat and you're looking up there, and there are the mountains covered with snow. It's just for a tennis fan, it's a magical place. But yeah, it was every year for a long, long time, and hopefully again starting next year.
And I know you've been to the U.S. Open a few times, I think, too.
Many, many times. Yeah.
You ever been to Wimbledon?
Not during the tournament. I was in London, went to Wimbledon, but it wasn't during the tournament. So at some point that might be a goal to do.
Sure. Yeah, it's got to be on the bucket list. But let's go back to the business for a second. I'll give you the last thought, and then I'll wrap up when you're done. advice, like I said earlier, I mean, when I look at those two groups, that 25 roughly year old person right now, or that 60-year-old that maybe's lost a job, lost a career, or just so watered down that what they used to make is just unavailable anymore going forward. And they're looking at our industry. Maybe they're getting involved for the first time. Maybe they're getting re-involved. Maybe they have a little downline in a company and they're, going to go back and say, okay, let me really take a second look at this. What's your sage advice to them with all the experience that you've had?
Well, I think the number one is they have to decide what it is they want to get out of this thing. The way I look at things at 63 is very different than the way I look at things at 23. At 23, I was looking to get a couple of bucks in the bank. I was looking to buy my first condo or house. I was looking to have a decent car. I wanted to have shoes that weren't completely scuffed up. I remember this list. I had a list, John, that had things like my goal list of what new shoes, coffee table, new suit, basic stuff like that. And then it grew to, other stuff. Now I look at life a little differently because there's nothing material I want that I don't have. And so I view it differently. But if you're looking at this as a 60-year-old or versus 25 or whatever the age is, it really is just coming up with a plan, deciding what you want and going after it. And the thing that's nice about this business, you can build it around the rest of your life. So if you're 60 and you want to spend time with the grandkids, and other stuff, but you still need to work, you know what? You can work around this. Now, it doesn't mean you can spend all your time doing the fun stuff. You do have to work at it. It's called network marketing, not net free marketing or something. But it's figuring out what you want. Now, you don't have necessarily as much time as a 25-year-old who's looking to build that career and get all that first stuff. But by the same token, I know of a guy in his 80s, he started in this type of business and became super, super, super successful. So there really is no limits. Whatever you want to accomplish, make sure you're with a company that you like, that you respect the people, that you respect the products, that you feel that they're ethical, that the company's going to be around. And there are ways to determine that by looking if they're public, looking at their finances, if they're private, just asking around about who the people are that run it. The only caution I would give is do your own research. Don't just listen to everyone and says to you, oh, the company's backed by billionaires, and it's, a lot of times it's not. And so just get the real story. But it just, whether you're 25 or 60, figure out what you want, figure out a way to go after it, find someone who will teach you how to do it, and go to work.
Great. Well, Mark, this has been a pleasure and a privilege to interview you, not only as a friend, but as somebody I've looked up to. And I know, frankly, in the early years, when I first started, you were the first guy I ever met making $6,000 a month, which, in 1983 seemed like, $60,000 a month. I remember coming to your home, the home that you had overlooking New York City on the Jersey side and all of that. And I wanted to be you.
That was my first condo. I remember that condo. I think I paid $110,000 for it, and it was my bachelor pad. Watching the bridge, looking at all of Manhattan. It was pretty cool.
Cliffside Park was that, or Fort Lee? I don't remember. Yeah, I remember coming there and looking at the city, and it was just such a great thing. You were always such a nice guy and helpful, and always returned my phone calls when I was just a novice at this. And okay, well, this guy's making $6,000 a month. He's from New Jersey. If he can do it, I can do it. But let me figure out how he's doing it. So you were a great mentor and friend, and I appreciate that. So this is John Solleder. This is the Leave Nothing to Chance podcast, which is now available on iTunes. And a number of other podcasts around the world. We are in syndication now, so you can find us. You can just go to either Leaving Nothing to Chance podcast or Leave Nothing to Chance podcast, and you'll find us. So once again, I want to thank Mark for his time. Everybody have a great balance of your day. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.